Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my power ranking series for my number 18. We're going to be looking at the Baltimore Ravens. There is depth galore here at the offensive line. I mean, these are just the guys I was able to list, but man, there's so much depth here for Baltimore, and they all basically fit their scheme too, which is incredible. Juwan James, Ben Powers, Ben Cleveland, Daniel Falele. These were all great selections and pickups by this team, and all these guys I think could start in a pinch or are developing well to take over spots for the future. I mean, incredibly well done by the Ravens front office here. We talk about starters. Morgan Bose is coming off a pretty good stint, having to switch off the football team, but I think he's a good starter here. Again, anything happens to him, you slide in Jawan James, who also had injury issues, but again, he gets hurt. Slide in Daniel Falele. I mean, Tyler Phillips filled in at right tackle before. It's not entirely out of nature. I mean, they really have an answer at O line for almost everything, and full credit to them. Kevin Zeitler, one of the best pickups. I was really curious to see who was going to pick up Kevin Zeitler when he was released, as I thought he still had a lot left in the tank. If a scheme, a perfect scheme fit kind of comes around, I thought he could still play at a top level for at least another 3 years. Thankfully, the Baltimore Ravens came around, and I was like, "Yep, there we go. There's going to be a top guard right there." And Kevin Zeitler's played that pretty well. He's not quite to a star standard, in my opinion. You got for a guard, I have a pretty high standard of what has to happen at guard for me to get it, but he's close. If he plays like he played last year again, I would not be opposed to giving it to him. I think that was an incredible pickup by the Baltimore Ravens. We'll come back to center after. I want to talk about the other really excellent player on this team, and Ronnie Stanley. I mean, fits scheme well, basically top tackle in the league. Top five left, probably maybe top 10 total. I'd have to actually do a list to try to figure that out, but he's definitely up there. Basically everything you ask for when it comes to foot speed, power within the base. They love to run a lot of these power gap schemes here, which Stanley really excels at. I mean, again, he's also had injuries that have plagued this team. But with how this team is prepared going, through last season and this season, while it sucks you're going to be missing, the really high quality level of play, I would not put it past, someone like Morgan Moses or Jawan James to be able to fill in for the little bit of time he's gone. Tyler Phillips, super fun player. Of course, I used the photo of him being able to pick up the ball and bully through some guys. Uh, he he really struggles mostly in pass pro. He's kind of the weak spot of pass pro on this line, but he really dominates in the run game. Like he is an absolute mauler in that aspect. I feel like I keep talking about those type of guys with some of these top teams recently, or some of the teams that are kind of in their rebuild. But they're super fun. They really tack downfield really well. And if you have these guys pull or get to the second level, that's where they start really wreaking havoc. So if he can clean up some of his pass pro, I think he could be a pretty serviceable guard. But he's still on his ascension. Tyler Linderbaum was the pick here at center. And the reason I wanted to come to him last, because I've kind of got some interesting ideas about this. Linderbaum is an exceptional athlete and I think an exceptional player. I don't think there's really any doubt about that among scouts. My biggest thing with him coming here was I need to see how he can fit in a power scheme before I am ultra comfortable with that selection. I'm not against what the Ravens do, using that selection to get a center. I think that's totally fine. I think he's, a great player. I've said so. Uh, but man, when I watched his tape, I saw someone who could be an elite level center in any form of a West Coast because that's what utilizes his athletics to their max. And most of his issue comes off of him being a little lighter and not having the typical arm length that these centers have. And we've talked about arm length multitude of times. But the arm length thing can be often be accounted for when you talk about a guy like Austin Blythe who did it for the Rams, who has the very same kind of arm length that Linderbaum has, that really short arm length, but he excelled mostly in a system that allowed him to get on the move and use his athletics. So I'm in a kind of I'm pushing the brakes a little bit when it comes to Tyler Linderbaum. I need to see if he can handle playing in a power scheme. Maybe he puts on a little more weight going into training camp to fit the scheme a little bit better. But I I do wonder if it might hurt his ability. We'll see. It could honestly, I could be worrying for nothing, and Linderbaum slides right in and plays great immediately. But just from what I've seen on tape, I want to just pause and see how he handles the first 8 weeks at least. At quarterback, there is some depth here, like Huntley, for example, who's had some decent play. But I mean, the guy is Lamar Jackson. He is uh, how do I say? He's a special athlete when it comes to what he can do with the ball in his hands. It is very Michael Vick-esque when Lamar sees, nothing's open immediately, pressure's coming in, time to go. The way he can then buy time or get yardage downfield is exceptional. Right? I said it's in that same line that Vick used to do where you really just can't get a clean hand or a clean hit on him. He's extremely shifty. He knows how to lower his center of gravity to get guys to bite. It's very abnormal for a quarterback to be able to do that. I mean, when we're thinking about scrambling quarterbacks, I mean Kyler can't do it. Kyler's got some decent moves, but not anywhere to the near level of Lamar. I mean RG3, even back in the day, I don't think would say that he has the same level of scramble that Lamar has. I mean, we're talking about like a once in a decade type athlete, and that doesn't mean that they're always good either, right? We've seen athletes like this in the past, get chances and they just don't work out. I'd say only one of these guys comes around roughly every decade or so that has a legit chance of developing, and Lamar has clearly seemed to develop. His passing woes have definitely seemed to have cleaned up over the last couple years, and he's definitely improved. There's actually some photos of him right now where he's changed his throw mechanic again. And he's actually put on a little more weight, which should help with sustainability a little bit more. And I don't think it's actually going to harm his ability to scramble either, from what I've seen. Which, if you can get Lamar's scramble ability on top of him, being a little bit bigger, a little more durable, with maybe a little bit stronger arm, with that new throwing mechanic, I mean, it's again, I mentioned this in the Chargers video. You're talking about what could be a top five quarterback in the league type mentality, and he knows it. It's currently why he's not signed that extension with the Ravens. He thinks he might be able to kind of break money, break new ground with the Ravens here, and I would not put it past them to say yes to that or for Lamar to do it. So I'm super excited to see what Lamar does. Keep an eye on him for this season. If you're looking for fantasy, I think he's going to be an extremely good pickup yet again. Just man, I can't even contain my excitement to see what Lamar does. Okay, so when we're talking about depth, I have to talk about the tight end and running back room here. It is actually insane. I mean, I can't even put them all on. I mean, I'm just going with, J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards at running back, two very good power backs. They complement each other well, but there's guys even past them that fit more of the third down back or even more of the power. I mean, Davis is here too. It's just crazy depth at running back. Tight end, they double draft two rookies. Charlie Kolar is a super interesting pickup. I liked that one a lot. I had him pretty high in my tight end rankings. Nick Boyle took a little bit of a pay cut to stay here. He's still one of the better blocking tight ends in the league. And of course, you have Mark Andrews, one of the top tight ends in the league as well, who, I mean, he does basically everything. Him and Lamar's connection is pretty good. I think as people have seen, it's I mean, it's exceptional. If you lose the starting one, you have like a plethora of options that you can pick from to answer this, to answer like anything the defense throws at you. For Mark Andrews, he he is basically again a mold of tight end that is the do-it-all tight end. He blocks extremely well. He knows how to sink into breaks despite his big size, and he doesn't really lose any speed in doing so. He's not really slow in that aspect either. He can be used as a receiver on all three levels of the field. So, if he gets a favorable matchup with a linebacker, he will absolutely just beat on most linebackers. It's pairing him with Lamar with his really, heavy play action or really bring guys into the box to threaten the run type game style. I mean, he's a perfect fit. Receiving wise, I know the Ravens fans were a little iffy about letting Brown go, and we're wanting a better receiver. I'm actually completely content with this move. I like Bateman a lot. I think he absolutely can play the number one in this type of system. I think that's completely fine. Prochet has done pretty well as the slot option, even though he hasn't really got too many, real attempts here. He's been kind of buried. I think him as the slot is not a bad idea. And finally, just unleashing Devin Duvernay, who I think I had a decent grade on him as well, which I applaud the Ravens for. I mean, there's some good stuff you can do with Devin Duvernay as well when it comes to route combo wise. So while yes, you are technically lacking a prototypical number one receiver, and there's still some guys out there. There's still, Odell will not be available till really late in the season, but he's still around. Julio, if his hamstrings hold up, is still hanging around. Will Fuller is a deep threat again, still hanging around. So it's not like the veteran options are lacking, so to speak. But I as a Raven, if you're thinking as a Ravens fan, I would be completely content seeing that this crew walk out there with Lamar to kick off the season. I think that's a completely fine idea. I will just have to say a quick note. There is a good fullback here in Patrick Ricard. Usually I do a note of them here. There's also Ben Mason, who is an intriguing fullback in my opinion, but I will get to Patrick Ricard later because he's a little more special than just a notable fullback. Okay, defensive front seven. Each one individually, I'm not really quite okay with giving the star. Some of the guys are on their descent, some of them on their ascent to talent. But I think as a crew and with how this team works defensively, they are collectively a star defense. Calais Campbell, he is the definition of a D end. He can line up in a variety of techniques or even out wide at nine. Is a really fun way. I've seen some teams use him. There's a lot of stuff you can do with Calais Campbell that will open up other players. I mean, you can line Calais out wide. You have your nose tackle in either Travis Jones, good selection again to back up Michael Pierce, who also was a great re-pickup. Paying him only $5 million a year was an insane grab for the Ravens to get, a guy who's very familiar with them back after the Vikings released him. I think that was a very good steal. Having guys like that in the middle take up space and be able to crash inwards with Calais Campbell, also being able to crash in from the wide, wide nine, there's a lot of stuff that you can goad offenses into doing, which then you can take away immediately, which will force these offenses to work a lot more on the heels of their feet rather than what they've game planned for. Linebacker wise, they are really lacking here. I'll mention Patrick Queen, but he hasn't overly impressed me either. He is an insane athlete, and you see the flash plays when he's in man coverage. You can see them. Uh, but man, he still gets bullied a lot in the run. Which is why they've really loaded so heavily up front here. If a guard gets to the second level with Queen, I think that's basically it at that point. If those front four can't really do anything, Patrick Queen's not really going to be able to account for you in any single way. So you're hoping for a little bit more out of Queen going into this season, but for me, if I was hoping, trying to figure out what I want from him as a player, I would say I want more or less just more consistency on those flash plays. Like I said, you can see what he can do and what type of athlete he can be when he makes those insane coverage grabs, right? He jumps a route or follows a guy up seam, up some kind of fade or out route. I just need that to be more consistent. I don't know if Queen will ever be exceptionally good in the run if he's going to get blocked one on one. But I think we can schematically account for that if you do certain things with the defense. They did that with the Arizona Cardinals. They do that with Isaiah Simmons as well to protect him. The Bears, when they first got Roquan, they did that to help protect him. Although Roquan's improved a lot since then. There's stuff you can do to protect Queen, but for going into the season, I just hope for more consistency for Queen in those flashy plays on defense when it comes to coverage. Edge players. Odafe Owe, great selection. I wasn't super high on him during the draft. I said he's going to take some time getting used to, but when I saw the Ravens picked him, I said, crap, he's about to go off. the Ravens are notorious for developing edges very well, and having like him, especially with Justin Houston, who they just picked back up, and David Ojabo, who I was super high on as well. Very similar type players, where extremely good athletes that play with power very well, and just they need to refine their actual tool belt. Having guys like that with Houston in this scheme with this training staff, I mean, they're just bound to be good players. It's really not a question of if, it's just when. So I would feel I feel no fear walking into the season with these players at edge. I expect them to be productive and they'll play their scheme well. I see no reason they will not cause havoc for opposing offenses. So now I want to talk about Patrick Ricard. He is the man, as I called him. Uh, the reason he's here on defensive front seven is because he actually will sometimes line up as an interior defensive lineman. He's done it before, and they'll put him out at fullback. It's kind of he started really on the defense, and they flipped him to fullback, and he showed that he was good there as well. He's good on special teams. Like he is just the embodiment of "I will do whatever you ask me" type player, and coaches love that, and it really allows you to do some fun, versatile stuff when it comes to defensive or offensive plays. So Patrick Ricard, he's definitely one of the best, I'd say, do-it-all type players in the league. You got like him or Juszczyk as kind of a handful of players that can kind of do it all. But you gotta love Patrick Ricard. Defensive backs. This has gone. I mean, this is a little ridiculous at this point. Honestly, Ravens, they draft so well, and I applaud them every year for it. They draft. It's almost like they just know. They just know who's good. I mean, getting Jalen Armour Davis to play in this scheme. I mean, if they want to eventually let Marcus Peters go, if they think, hey, we can't afford him, we need to get a little cheaper, that's a perfect replacement coming from Bama. Like that's about as good as it get. Fluid hips, plays well in man coverage, has shown some serious development over his time with Saban in a very similar scheme that likes to blitz, that likes to get hybrid up front. I mean, for him to learn under guys like Peters and Humphrey, and you even brought in Kyle Fuller, who's a really great fill-in, fourth corner to have here. It's just a plethora of talent in the corner room. Humphrey is a super, yeah, just I mean, top corner, plays very gritty. I love the zone instincts that he shows, especially when it comes to those looks where he's looking for those overs. But on top of that, he is probably the best run defender at corner that I've seen in a very long time. He has perfected the peanut punch, as we call it, where he can just basically he forms his hand into this basically fist, and it must be as hard as a rock. Because man, when he throws that punch into the ball carrier's hand, that ball is almost certainly coming out. He has perfected it to a T. I think Peanut Tillman would be extremely excited and extremely happy to see that his legacy is carrying on through Marlon Humphrey. So Ravens fans gotta love that. Marcus Peters on the other side, I mentioned him briefly. He's a super fun player as well. That was a really easy trade for the Ravens to do. At the time. Peters is. I wasn't always thrilled with him being number one because not because he wasn't really consistently good at covering those guys. He was always a really good cover corner. Uh, the reason I didn't like it is because he takes a lot of risks, and I'd rather he takes those risks with a number two than he takes it with a number one. That's just my opinion. And when it comes to taking risks, Marcus Spears is more often right than he is wrong. And then you pair that with his very good ball skills. I mean, that's when you start getting the turnovers with Marcus Peters. And you paired him with Marlon Humphrey. Now you got guys like Kyle Fuller or Jalen Moore Davis to kind of fill in and rotate with them. I mean, this is when the secondary gets really difficult. Brandon Stevens is taking the slot corner role. Pretty good athlete. Someone I trust the Ravens feel they're pretty confident in starting, and I don't think they're overly wrong. They've shown to have pretty good instincts in who they want to start in the defensive back position across the board when they kind of pick someone who's not very well known or very well highly regarded. I think they know what they're doing. They've earned the benefit of the doubt in that aspect. Safeties, they made some huge moves here. Chuck Clark's still here. Very good player, pretty underrated, honestly, at this point. He's always kind of just played well. So, always a lot of fun to see a player like him really kind of get his shot and maybe get some respect here from me. He can become, he comes down in the box, he'll play hybrid, he'll stick in man on, even a slot receiver. I've seen him do a couple times, and he's held his own. I think some more respect should be given to Chuck Clark. Safeties, besides Chuck Clark, though, Kyle Hamilton was brought in. I was not on that Kyle Hamilton trade or train that had him as a top 5 player. I said there is a lot of stiffness there that he needs to be in a scheme that protects that stiffness and lets him, work within a corner of the field rather than really trying to carry. Again, thankfully, he comes to Baltimore where they're going to be bringing him down a lot, which I thought his height would be really used for, and he'll be coming to just like they'll give him a little corner of the field and be like, "Hey, this corner is yours. Don't worry about everything else. We got like Humphrey and Marcus Williams and Marcus Peters. Like, don't worry about these other sections. They'll be fine. You just take this corner and thrive." And I think Cal Hamilton will show that he can absolutely do that, and probably do that at a high level. I mean, guys with his measurables don't often come to the league, and he's already shown a pretty good mental fortitude for some of the stuff offenses have like to do. Coming from Notre Dame, they're pretty good at developing safeties, just period. So it's exciting to see what they might do with him here. I do worry that what will happen to Chuck Clark eventually, but I'm sure another team will jump on that train if they eventually have to let Chuck Clark go. Free safety, Marcus Williams. I know he's always memed for that one missed tackle, but he is one of the better free safeties in the league. Doesn't really often get that respect. He's got the range, he's got the instincts. He he's really gonna do exactly what, how do I say it? When they went to get Earl Thomas and it just wasn't working out. But besides the personal things, when Earl Thomas wasn't producing nearly as highly as they were hoping for when they paid him all that money, they were missing some of the stuff that in man coverage or some of the high end instincts with Earl, kind of getting older, that they are getting here with Marcus Williams, right? This is why they were completely content starting Elliott at free safety instead of Earl when that whole situation went down. They're like, yeah, Elliott can do the hybrid stuff. He's got the extreme athletics and instinct at his young age, and they were completely content starting him. Well, now you've got that dialed up to 11 with Marcus Williams taking your free safety role. I think this secondary is going to be very formidable going into next year. Special teams and coaching, this is an elite crew. You have the best kicker in the league, in my opinion, and Justin Tucker set record last year. He, I mean, you can't really get any better or more consistent than him. I also do trust their special teams coordinator in Horton. I think he's done a very good job, especially with the actual special teamers themselves. They eventually had to let their longtime punter go, and they drafted a rookie in Stout. I trust that, Horton's like, hey, I can develop this guy. He's worth the selection. We're gonna go get this guy. He has really consistent kicks, or whatever the measure they really liked on that. There's a couple different measures you can have for kickers and punters that some teams value more than others, but Stout's kicking numbers are pretty good for a punter. So I feel like the Ravens again have more than earned the benefit of the doubt when it comes to, yeah, we're going to pick this rookie over others. Coordinators, Greg Roman's still here. I'm completely content with that. I think that's totally fine. I think he can do some really good stuff with the guys that are here. New defensive coordinator, McDonald. We'll see. We'll see more or less. There's some changing of the guard and some shifting with the Baltimore Ravens coordinators and coaching over the last few years. And I'm always more than willing to give them a shot because usually when they bring a guy in or they elevate a guy, they've really not been an issue. So again, they've more than earned the doubt when it comes to letting a guy take the reins. John Harbaugh, he's been one of the best coaches in the league for a very long time now, in my opinion. I think you can question, whether he should be taking as many risks as he does, going for two instead of going into OT. That's a fair, question to ask, but when it comes to actual game planning, I don't think you can really question his ability to get his guys ready, or to adjust to what's been happening on the offense or defensive side of the ball. I think there is tons of teams in the league that would throw whatever they could at John Harbaugh if he was ever to not be here. And I think the Ravens were and super and are now very happy to acquire him and keep him here. All right, so overall, this Ravens team is basically built to compete now, and they really do have some pieces for the future. I said they have drafted extremely well over these last 3 years, It's actually shocking to see how well they have actually drafted. Really, the biggest issue here is that some of these pieces are starting to get old or older. I mean, we said there's Calais Campbell, who while I do like, he's coming to the end. He's getting up there on the other side of 30 or 30s. Pardon me. He's already well past 30. And then you do have Lamar's contract looming over them. You need the Ravens to start relying on more of those young, talented pieces that they've drafted over the last couple of years, which I'm not overly worried about. I think they'll fill right in. I think the Ravens have done more than enough to prepare for the future. So basically, if this team can stay healthy, and if this team, when they do go for those risky plays, I talked about those amount of 2-point conversions they went for last season to have it paid off in their favor, or they lower the amount of times they do it. I think this team makes a very strong case for a Super Bowl presence this year. I would not be opposed to seeing it or seeing it happen at all. I think they can sweep a lot of these teams, even the teams I have ranked above them. I think certain situations they can absolutely sweep them. So that being said, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you all next time. Later.